Okay, welcome back to the Tarawera post-race show, Trailgating here, Rotorua, New Zealand. My name is Dylan Bowman, joined by my trusty co-host, Corinne Malcolm. Corinne, good morning.
Morning.
Are we all exhausted here in studio today?
I feel like we sound as haggard as we look, or we look as haggard as we feel. I'm not sure what it is, but we are falling apart at the seams.
You know, but that's the consequences for having the best day ever yesterday. Was it not so fun?
It was fun, and we got to do a little bit of what we love. You know, we got to run. We also got to spectate, and we got to cheer on people, and they let us touch mics, even though we weren't really supposed to yesterday. Yeah. So we got to do everything, which was very, very fun.
Honestly, I had such a blast yesterday, and we're going to talk all about it. But as you just referenced, we both got to run the 50Ks yesterday. We'll be providing our personal race reports. But I just have to say, how fun is it to actually come and cover a race, as we've done a million times, and actually get to participate?
It is. I feel like I've been in this boat maybe before where you haven't, where it's like you've suckered me into doing commentary for 12 hours and then I run the 50K the next day, a la Gorge last year.
Right.
And I will tell you, it generally feels pretty horrible. So I knew what to expect maybe going into this race weekend, but it was really cool. You know, we came all the way to New Zealand, getting to experience 50 plus kilometers of trail here made me want to come do a lot more trail here. So I feel very lucky and very privileged that we got to be here for work.
Yep.
And we also got to run.
Yep. Awesome. And what a lovely weekend it was, weather-wise, in terms of the vibes. Some of the photos that Ryan captured that were posted on the Freetrail Instagram account yesterday, I think just really captured the energy, the big friendly, as Carrie called Tarawera. I mean, we'll remember, you know, those photos that Ryan captured. Literally everybody just has a huge smile on their face. It was just a fantastic weekend.
Yeah, we didn't get any waterfalls in our course, which I feel a little bit jilted by. So we got to come back for the 100K because it seems like there's some better terrain, not better. Yeah. There's some more terrain out there that we did not get to experience.
Okay, well, I can barely walk after a 50K,
so
we got to get some training in.
You can preview the 100K with me and then do more media, and I will run the 100K.
Yeah, so a quick run of show for this morning's post-race show. We're going to go through the results of the 102K, the golden tickets that we distributed yesterday. We'll talk about the 50K champions and podiums. We'll go through our experiences out on the race course, and then we'll wrap up. We are going to have some champions interviews here after our show today. So Ruth Croft, Dan Jones, Bianca from South Africa, who won the women's race in the 50K, potentially even Hayden Hawks coming in here. So we'll be posting those separately in addition to our post-race show here today. And then we'll be done for the weekend. Ryan gets to go on vacation to the South Island, and Corinne and I will make our way back to North America. So kicking things off, 102K, top line story. Let's just go straight to the champions.
Fast Dan Jones, three-peats.
Dan Jones securing the three-peat in what was, in my mind, like one of the most dominant, convincing, and impressive victories in a 100K race that I can remember.
He won by 30 minutes, bettering his own time by over 10 minutes, I want to say, coming in at a blistering 7:17:42 officially.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
Ryan's going to pick up a mic here. Because Corinne and I were on the race course ourselves in the 50K.
We were busy.
Yeah, we didn't get to follow the front of the race as we typically do in person. But Ryan was there, clipping bangers as usual. So, again, go follow Freetrail on Instagram and admire all Ryan's photos. But, Ryan, tell us a little bit about the early miles out there in the Tarawera forest.
Well, it was amazing because I got driven around everywhere, so I didn't have to do any of the navigating, and I just got to hop out and shoot photos. And I didn't realize that there's no service, so I didn't realize that you needed service to send out into the world what the status was. And there was one moment where we got service and I was like, whoa, Ruth is in first overall. What happened? And then I realized everybody was in first overall because it hadn't updated. So it was cool to get a front row seat. I saw them at 8K, 13K, 15K, and then 30K, and then 60K. So it was awesome getting the front row seat.
Tell us about, like, especially Ruth and Devin, right? Like, I'm sorry, Ruth and Dan. Ruth and Devin are our friends from the Ironman UTMB world. Ruth and Dan are champions. Tell us a little bit about what it was like observing their amazing performances.
Yeah. Dan, every time I saw him, Dan just had a huge smile on his face, and it looked like he was just out for a jog. And the people that were with him at the moment looked like they were working, and Dan was just smiling. And there was one point at the waterfall where we had on our timesheet that he'd be there at like 9:30. Yeah. And so I'm just shooting the ferns. I'm in the middle of the woods shooting ferns, shooting the waterfall, and someone yells, and I had like 3 seconds to get ready because he came 20 minutes earlier than we thought. And so you could see in those photos, he knew he was like killing it. Yeah. And he just has a smile looking at me like, I almost just snuck by. And but fortunately I got him. And then same thing with Ruth, even though Beth was out front and Beth ran an amazing race. Beth was out front early on. Like, Beth had a couple minute gap.
And that was intentional. Like, she was like, that's the only place I could put time into Ruth.
Right.
And so she went out hard.
Really?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Ruth's a closer. Cool. But every time I saw Ruth smiling, if I was like, yo, Ruth, she'd look over and see me and smile, like, just so like having the time of her life. And seemed like everyone around her was also smiling. Like, it was like this aura, this radiance coming from her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think at the waterfall, Ruth was right with Beth, like a couple steps in front of Beth. And then they went back to a dirt road, and we were driving the dirt road, and Beth gapped her again. And then the next time I saw, it was Ruth, and then Caitlin was right there, and then Beth, and they were pretty close at 60 Ks. And I know there's a lot of race left from that point, but it was cool because like each time, I think Ruth was about like somewhere around 10th all day overall. And so you never know who. I would be at a new aid station. You never know who was going to come out of the woods next. If it was like Jacob or Ryan Montgomery or Ruth or Caitlin, and it was really cool.
Yeah. The women's race was a lot closer than the men's race, so let's talk about that in a little bit. But maybe sticking with Dan first, we talked to him after the race yesterday. Ryan and I were wrapping up for the day, bumped into Dan and his mom and dad, who were just coming out of the bar, actually, to go back to the finish line. He's still in his race kit, and we had a good chance to chit-chat with him for a little bit. And I asked him, do you feel like that's your best race ever? He was like, yeah, I really think it was.
Yeah, I mean, Hayden told us he was fit. I don't think Dan predicted just how fit he was. Yeah. And it was really cool to watch him pull off a race so flawlessly with his parents here, family in tow, home turf, three-peat, in a new sponsor kit officially because he signed with Adidas Terex right after his win here last year. Yeah. So I imagine that. And they put him to work this week. That dude was doing media stuff and leading the team around. And, you know, he had a lot of responsibilities this week as kind of the local and the previous champion. And for him to like sail through all that smoothly as well, I feel like it's a big deal.
Did you listen to his post-race interview right at the finish line?
I don't think I was able to catch all of it.
It was awesome because, I mean, one of the things that stood out to me where he basically was like, yeah, I figured I would just like stay on the gas, put pressure on the field, run aggressively. And he was like, I was really surprised with how my body responded. And obviously he ran 7:17 on that course. He was predicting himself it would be 7 hours and 50 minutes for the winning male. Again, this was a different course from what Dan has previously run, being the two-time defending champion. Closing down the three-peat run in 7:17, and by his own admission, his best race ever.
Yeah, I had nothing to lose too, right? Already into Western States, finishing 4th there last year. Look, and you and I were talking at the finish line, and we're like, isn't it crazy that Dan's not going to be in the like A-team conversation at Western States? And it's like, the dude should not be an underdog. And yet, when most people preview Western States, where are they going to put Dan?
Right.
In that, not in the tier going for the win, in that next tier. And I think that is a shame.
I have written in my notes here that, I am going to make it my personal objective to make sure Dan Jones is in that conversation with the A tier of men at Western States. Again, this year's men's race at Western States is going to be one of, if not the best ever. So the likes of Jim Walmsley, Rod Farvard, Hayden Hawks, Adam Peterman, potentially Killian Jornet, Vincent Bouillard. It's easy for somebody like Dan, who's still building his stature, reputation in the sport, to, be in that same conversation as those world famous, iconic champions. It is now my personal mission in life to make sure Dan Jones is in that conversation for the A tier of men contenders at Western States.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And you and I will have many months to continue to talk about this and drive this narrative. But the men's race is going to be a battle of the champions, largely speaking. And that's kind of how it's setting up. And the women's races, we'll be crowning a new champion at Western States. And again, we picked up 2 more spots into that race this weekend. Yeah. Excited to talk about the golden tickets and kind of what that might mean for Western States.
Let's get to that in a second. Let's just stick with the men. But last thing on Dan before we move off of him, I would love to have you comment, Corinne, because clearly he's in such great shape. And Western States is the objective. You being a coach and a professional athlete for a long time, obviously he's proven to himself, okay, I'm in incredibly good fitness. It's only February. So one of the things we talked to Dan about yesterday was, no pressure now, just recover from this. You're fit. Don't be a hero. I mean, how would you be approaching things as an athlete or as a coach, if you were in Dan's position?
Yeah, I think in talking to Dan this week too, it seems like he's mostly been in a speed block. Like he has not been doing super high volume. He has not been doing some of those more like, steady state marathon effort type runs that those guys will be putting in as it comes towards like that Western States build. I think he's got a really good setup coming down the pipeline for him. He's going to take a little exhale here for a week or two. He's not going to stop training, but he's going to kind of reset. He's got team camp with the Adidas Terex team coming up, which will be kind of a good training opportunity. It does mean kind of a long trip out, but he will be stopping by, I think, the Bay Area on his way home from that team camp. Going to jump into, I think, the Lake Sonoma 50 mile. He has been to that area. He has run well on that course before, so it'll be kind of cool to have him, just like rip a 50 mile effort in our neck of the woods in April. And then, from there, it's kind of training camp mindset all the way to Western States. And he's got a lot of experience doing that now. This will be, I think, his 3rd time back. And so I am excited to see kind of what he lays out. But in talking to him, in talking to his support team and talking to his training partners, he's got a really good plan to bring him from really early season fitness, which is kind of scary, to Western States. And I would say that like this was a fit Dan, but this wasn't a fit Dan with like Western States specificity under his belt. So to pull out this kind of run on this course in February is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, so awesome. And it sounds like he and Hayden are going to be doing their thing down in probably the Cedar City area in that final huge training block leading into Western States. Ryan already has way too many projects here in 2025, but I might insist that we go down there and just capture a little bit of their training, because I'm sure the trail running world would love to be a fly on the wall witnessing those two champions make each other better athletes in the heat of their most important training block of the year. So stay tuned for that. Ryan, I apologize in advance. Moving on, 2nd place, Hiroki Kai from Japan, Ganbate, finishing 7 hours, 48 minutes, about 30 minutes behind Dan. I met Hiroki Kai at the Mount Fuji 100 a couple of years ago, and he is just such a fun and likable character in the sport. He's sort of like a famous running YouTuber in Japan. They call him Crazy Karo. For those of you who saw our photographs from yesterday, you'll notice that he is wearing sort of like a small camera on his hat. So he is literally videotaping the entirety of his 100-kilometer race yesterday, where he finished 2nd overall and earned a golden ticket. One little fun anecdote from me at the race director's barbecue, which we all went to on Thursday night, Friday night, something like that.
It was
Thursday
a night. Yeah.
He came up to me. He said, I really want a golden ticket to Western States. And he was in the mix all day, finishing 2nd place here. An awesome run from Hiroki Kai, who adds a fun Japanese storyline to Western States.
Yeah, he was in tears at the finish line. He was very much overwhelmed with emotion of having the day go to plan, of being able to secure that golden ticket so that he can join us at Western States at the end of June. He didn't have a battle all day. He spent most of the day actually running with a Chinese athlete, and they were duking it out, kind of trading blows in that chase group behind Dan Jones. The Chinese athlete ended up, I think, dropping out of the race, and Hiroki Kai stuck the landing and stayed away from the hard-charging Adrian McDonald in 3rd place. I think Adrian had kind of one of those back half really good runs that we, I think, anticipate from him. And so it was really cool. While Dan was 30 minutes clear of the field, the men's group in 2, 3, 4, I feel like they just kept rolling into the finish line while we were standing there. It was pretty intense. And so Hiroki Kai will be an interesting add to Western States. I hope this means that he gets to come over early and get some time in on the course and get some time just kind of experiencing that terrain, but clearly has the leg speed for it.
Yeah. And he'll be in that front pack early at Western States.
Oh, he'll be pushing it up the escarpment for
Definitely
sure.
runs with style and bravery and aggressiveness. And so he'll definitely add like a fun element or, energy to that Western States men's field. You mentioned Adrian McDonald, maybe, the performance of the day, just in terms of tactics and execution. It was a back half rally. Adrian told me at the finish line, he was in 13th place at halfway, finished 3rd overall.
I mean, he's won the 100-miler here, so he knows exactly what to expect out there. He knows these trails. I loved at the finish line when I think you asked like why he was back here again to race this year, or maybe Allie asked that question, and he said, for that guy, and he pointed to the golden ticket, and I was like, yeah, when I saw his name on the start list too, I was like, oh, Adrian McDonald's here for a golden ticket, otherwise he'd be in the 100, and so I think he's a great ad. I think he's a really smart racer. He's the 2-time Leadville champion. He honestly ran a super impressive time. We would have been talking about his Leadville time if it hadn't been for David's Leadville time. Mm-hmm. And so Adrian is a guy who has been putting in the work at the fast, runnable 100-mile distance. And I think that he is an incredibly interesting ad to Western States. I don't think he's going to be sticking his neck out in the high country. But I do think that he's, again, not one of those guys that you want chasing you between Forest Hill and the finish line.
Yeah. I'm calling it right now, guaranteed top 10 at Western States. I mean, he has shown that he knows how to run 100-milers specifically, as you mentioned, especially the runnable 100-milers. 3 amazing runs at Leadville, a win here at the Tarawera Miler, a win at the Kosciuszko by UTMB 100-miler in Australia.
Yeah, I think he's done well at Coolaman maybe too over in Scandinavia. Like these fast races, the boy rips.
Yeah.
Like he is incredibly fast. And let's face it, Western States, while there's a high country and there's obviously uphills and downhills, it is a fast race and it only gets faster as you make your way towards Auburn.
Just like the proof of being able to execute over and over and
consistency.
over. I think
He's consistent.
Exactly. And just like he told me, he was like, I was getting a little nervous at halfway, but being able to confront, being nervous, feeling like you're out of the mix and to still stick with it, still stay on your game plan, not panic, and run your way all the way through the field to finish 3rd overall here. He ran 7:53. Remember, Dan predicted the finishing time, or what was it? It was
7:51.
Yeah, 7:51. So Dan predicted it would be about 7 hours, 50 minutes. And he was right for 2nd and 3rd place, although he ran 30 minutes faster. Anyway, awesome run by Adrian. Let's just chat about Cody, and then we can sort of rip through the back half of the top 10 men. But Cody Lynn also had a standout race yesterday.
Yeah, 3 minutes off of a golden ticket.
Yeah. And I know this was sort of like a last-minute decision for him to come over here as part of his addition to the Adidas Terex team, who's doing an activation this week. And awesome race from Cody.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I'm really excited to see Cody race this year. Had an amazing UTMB. He did tell me afterwards that, kind of the late add to this race, he was looking at Tarawera as like a B race, like not in A race fitness. And to pull off 3 minutes off of Adrian McDonald, he pushed hard to the line. He went under 8 hours here. Cody's fitness is coming around to a really interesting spot when he can be kind of off-season sub-8 at Tarawera shape. That's some fitness. So when Cody puts it together this year at some races, I wouldn't bet against him.
I told him, better sign up for Canyons.
I would love to see him added. I would love to see him added to that race. I do think that he would be another great runner in that contention.
Yeah, so awesome. All right, so in the 5th place for men was Marcel Hosch from Germany, also part of that Adidas Terex crew. 6th place, Ryan Montgomery. Marcel finished in 8 hours, 2 minutes. Ryan Montgomery in 6th, 8 hours, 3 minutes. Excuse me, 7th place, Jacob Banta Visuals bringing home an awesome finish, 8 hours, 23 minutes. Ninth place was.
Wait.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I gotta just shout out Jacob because he's repping for us creators.
The fast media boys.
He's probably the fastest of us media guys, and he no one looked like they were having more fun. He had no crew, so I was his honorary support system every time I saw him, hyping him up, and he smiled and he's like, this is so sick to be out here. Every time I saw him, it was so fun.
You just gave me a great idea. At TrailCon this year, we got to have a media guy and gal race in Palisades, in Olympic Valley. The freelancers, the creatives, the camera people, the podcasters, we all duke it out in our own way.
And you film it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. The roles are reversed. Okay.
I'll MC it. How's that?
In 8th place overall was Ruth Croft. So we'll get to her in a little bit. But in 8th place for the men was Eric Kantz. Looks like a Frenchman, 8 hours, 26 minutes. 9th place for the men, Gary Carlton from New Zealand, 8:34. 10th place, William Bealby from New Zealand, 9:13 overall. So that's the back half of the men's top 10. Any other comments? I know notable drops was Thibaut Baronian and Zhao Hu. I'm sure I'm butchering that name, but the Chinese athlete who was out front early. I think those were our two notable drops on the men's side.
Yeah.
Any other comments on the men before we move to the women?
I just I'm looking at this, which means we put 5 women between 11th and 17th in the men's, or in the overall field, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
That was we can talk about it. There was a tight bunch of racing going on the women's side, so we will get to that in just a moment. No, I think that the men put together really good races. I talked to Ryan Montgomery after their race, and what he said was that he ran what he thought he could. He ran good splits. He felt like he paced it really well, and just wasn't how the cards stacked out. People were running faster than that, and that is A-okay. An 8-hour finish here, or kind of right around that mark, is a really good time, and it's just kind of the way the cookie crumbled.
Yeah, and he's deep in what is an MBA program at Dartmouth right now. I know he's very busy.
Yeah, made it work to come out here.
Yeah.
I would say not ideal training in Hanover, New Hampshire right now. So really cool to see the North
heart
Americans.
of New England winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome run from Ryan Montgomery. Also just a very consistent athlete, especially in these 100K, 100-mile races. Moving to the women, starting with the champion, Ruth Croft, 3 wins in 4 years, one of my favorite athletes of all time across every sport. Challenged this year, pushed hard by Caitlin Fielder, who we'll talk about in a second. Reactions about Ruth?
Yeah, it wasn't a wire-to-wire win, which I think is really cool, actually, that, yes, Ruth, our queen, came out on top still, but it was not wire-to-wire. Beth led the early charge in this race in a big way. Caitlin had it closed down to about a minute at times. So it wasn't a given. It wasn't a gimme race for Ruth by any means. And she still ran an crazy fast time, breaking her own time on the course. And it's what we decided was her 3rd win in 4 years. So she didn't do it back to back to back like her teammate and fellow Kiwi, Dan Jones. But just a consummate pro, someone who gets the job done. She's a person that I think wins, everything she touches is gold in so many ways. I know, but I know that she does the work. I know she's putting in the work, and she's putting in the hours, and she's putting in the time. And it's really, really cool to see her, just the consistency and her ability to show up time and time again. She did turn down the golden ticket. She told us before the race that she didn't want it. Yep. UTMB is the focus for the year. And I
didn't even try and make her change her mind.
Yeah,
I know it's threatening peer pressure, but I didn't even try.
You didn't even look at her. You're like, yeah, you're good. Whatever. No, but I just think I also respect that a lot from Ruth. She knows exactly what she wants to do this year. She's done what she wanted to do at Western States. Do I think she could go to Western States and run faster? Oh,
definitely.
Heck yeah. Yeah. But I do think
she's got the cougar. She's got the cougar.
Yeah, she's got the cougar.
She finished 2nd also at Western States.
Yeah, so she's done really good work there. So I don't feel like she feels a need to come back, at least not at this point, and that is commendable.
Remember, she finished 2nd at UTMB last year. What might happen in 2025?
Very fast time, maybe a championship. It would be pretty cool.
Are we already talking about UTMB prognostication here?
Yeah, it's never too
early.
We
do get ahead of ourselves.
It's never too early. No, but she just ran an amazing race, and I was emotional at the finish, watching her emotional, and then watching kind of like the finish line ceremony, which we've never talked about or haven't talked about this week, is just really, really cool. You know, they're presented this trophy. There's a traditional haka. There's like this moment too where someone representing the group comes forward holding the trophy and then like literally like presses their forehead to her forehead. And like, it's this like very like emotional.
How appropriate
moment.
that both champions are Kiwis again too. Like it's kind of special to see Dan and Ruth receive that cultural ceremony being, you know, from this country.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think it was really, really cool. And then she looked fresh as a daisy afterwards. She was kind of hanging out. She was hanging out as long as I was hanging out
So
there.
think of the heater that she's been on going back 12 months now.
Yep.
She won Tarawera here last year. Then she won and broke the course record at Transvolcania. She won, I think, the 80K at Zugspitz, which was her tune-up for UTMB, where she ran, I think, the third fastest time ever, finishing second behind Katie Schott.
Fastest back half splits ever, too.
And then now, starting off 2025 with another huge course record at Tarawera. She ran 50 minutes faster than she did here at Tarawera last year. Could be representative of the fact that the course is a little bit faster, but also she was pushed for the first time here at Tarawera by Caitlin Fielder, who we'll talk about in a second, but 8:24.
Yeah, all the women thought that the course ran, like the women who have run here before, so Beth and Ruth in particular, and Nancy, all did make comments to this course being faster and feeling faster, which I think is really interesting. I do think this will be the kind of like the most OG course, the most like they will try to use this course moving forward. They've had to change the course year over year due to weather largely. So excited to see them run on kind of like what is closest to the traditional course here, I believe, and get it done with such fashion. I mean, this is just indicative of what's going on in the running world right now, right? Black Canyon was crazy. Millrose Games were crazy for track and field. Tarawera is crazy. It's just, I think we're going to see this like weekend over weekend over weekend where we have course records and world bests and world records, and it
feels like I'm the only person in the world not getting faster.
I think
right
you
now.
and I are the only people getting slower right now. Everyone else, everyone I coach
world
is
record,
getting faster.
course record, world record, course record, and I'm like, oh my god, I am so bad at running.
Yeah,
but those who are good at running
are running
Ruth
fast.
Croft and Caitlin Fielder, also very good at running. You heard it here first. Caitlin Fielder, a great runner, 6 minutes behind Ruth when all was said and done.
That's honestly, that's getting really close to Ruth too. I want to say like that feels threatening. And it was not like a blowout by any means. 6 minutes is tight over this distance.
We got to say, Ruth is a lot more experienced in races 100K plus.
Yeah, Caitlin has done some 100Ks. She's done the 50K here a number of times. She's been the champion of that race. But this, you know, she's had a bunch of hard 100Ks too. She had a rough day at CCC a couple years ago, but then has been kind of on the up and up at the end of the year. Had a battle at OCC this past year in one of the best ever 50K fields. Backed that up with a win at Templier in the 80K, which is very fast as well. And then, came home to Rotorua where she was born and raised and made good on the 100K here, stepping back up in distance and I think gaining a lot of confidence. There was a moment when she finished though, and you like brought forward the golden ticket where like she looked pretty cooked. Like she looked like she had just run a very hot 8.5 hours. And I was like, oh man, is she going to be like, yeah, that was enough? 100 miles sounds crazy. But she
said,
did accept.
I had a lot of time to think about this today. And yes, I think I would like to accept my golden ticket.
Yeah, and she's got a great team around her. That Adidas Terex team has a lot of experience now, too, with bringing athletes to that race, with having the team involved in it, with having, different athletes from the team pace and support their teammates. So she's going into Western States in probably one of the best ever setups for a lot of athletes with that team support and new to the team as well. And she's going to be taken care of in a really nice way.
Caitlin's just one of those athletes who I just have like a really good feeling about. She's
wonderful to begin with.
Yeah, I think like this is probably one of, if not her best races in her career. Again, she won Templier last year. I went back and revisited those results. She beat Sylvia Nordskar, Blandine Lahirondelle, Clementine Jeffrey, in that race. Jen Lichter was also in that race. So
it was a lot of who's of like 80K runners.
Yeah.
And some women in that field were stepping up to the 80K as well, which, you put Caitlin in that mix.
Yeah.
And so I remember talking to a couple other gals that were hoping to go to that race. It didn't quite work out for a couple people, but it was looking to be one of the better 80K fields for women ever.
Yeah.
And so Caitlin Fielder rising to the top of that field too had to be a bit of a confidence boost.
I just think, like, especially with this Tarawera result, it could be that, this being a transition moment in her career, she's starting to focus a little bit more on the longer distance stuff. She might find that she has a particular aptitude for the longer distance stuff. And you and I both know there's a great history of debutantes at Western States having incredible first 100 milers on that course, which I think suits her skills.
Yeah, when you don't know what to expect, too. Yeah. I think there is a beauty of a first-time 100-mile at Western States, because it is this, like, you don't know how bad it's going to hurt. You don't know how fast or you can't run on it. Like, I'm really excited to see Caitlin Fielder in them. It was like Ingvild Kaspersen last year, like just outstanding kind of debut moment. I think we're going to get a bunch of those this year, too.
Yeah. Awesome job from Caitlin Fielder. In third place, Beth McKenzie ran an absolute baller race. 45-year-old mother of two, also owns and operates their apparel business called Win Republic. So,
saw a lot of her shorts out there on different runners.
Yeah, I think it's very popular here in the Australasian region. Again, she's an American, but she and her husband, Luke McKenzie, who is also a former professional triathlete, make their home, I think, in Noosa, Australia. Both obviously longtime professional athletes, going back, to the multi-sport days. Ran, as you said, very tactically, recognizing her skill set, where she was going to play her cards relative to Ruth and Caitlin.
Technical stuff is not for me. I knew if I was going to make any time on those gals, it had to be in the opening marathon of the race, and that's exactly what she did.
So awesome race and well executed from her. We do need to address, obviously, there were some questions related to Beth as to whether or not she was going to accept her golden ticket to Western States. Beth was not eligible to be presented a golden ticket based on a suspension that she served starting in 2016. She was found to have a banned substance in her system back in her professional triathlon days. She has always maintained her innocence. We were in correspondence after we published our episode with Stian. She feels her case is actually very similar to Stian, not putting words into her mouth, but this is my interpretation of our exchange. She and I had a good conversation at the finish line yesterday. I don't even know if she would be interested in running Western States, but with Western States anti-doping policy, it was strict zero tolerance for people who have served suspensions. It's now basically, if you've served a ban of 3 months or more, it's more or less zero tolerance unless you appeal to the board to have consideration about your case, the circumstances around it. So anyway, that was the situation at the finish line. Congrats to Beth on an incredible race. And that answers the question on the golden tickets there at the finish line.
Yeah, so it's not even sure if she will appeal or not, because it's not even certain that she wants, quote unquote, to be at Western States this June. But
and again, she's always maintained her innocence, and she ran an incredible race yesterday.
Phenomenal run. I mean, so inspirational. I was like, cool, 45, Mama 2, let's go. I remember her finishing second here last year, and I was kind of like, who is this woman? Mm-hmm. Well, I was like, not to say that I felt it was like a fluke or something, but I was like, I didn't know enough about Beth McKenzie either, I think, at that point. And I was like, who is this gal? Like, what's this about? And then saw her win UTA as well, and I was like, dang, this woman is fast. And then to see her in this field, continuing to put in the work and to be in the mix, it's very clear just how talented she is, and particularly over that flatter, faster stuff, she's pretty next level. So kudos to Beth on a great run. Was really cool to see her at the finish line again, so fresh. It was really nice to meet her in person this time around.
Yeah, I got a chance to sit and chat with her for a bit too, and Luke McKenzie too, who was a guy who I really admired during his professional triathlon days. He was a podium finisher at Ironman Kona. I think it was probably 2013, 2014, something like that. So they've been around the endurance sports world for a long time now, owning their own apparel company. So high performance individuals, high achieving individuals in many different ways. So shout out to Beth on an incredible third place, which I think probably surprised a lot of our viewers and listeners here this week. So given the fact that ticket had to bump down, fourth place, Helen Red Cloud Mino Faulkner. I love Helen. I am such a huge fan of Helen. She marches to the beat of her own drum. Reminds me of Claire Gallagher in a lot of ways. Just
Yeah, Rory Bosio-esque
Right,
too, right?
yeah.
Just kind of doing her thing, which I really love. Did you see the embroidery on her bucket hat?
Yes.
And Jacob was like, yeah, she did that all herself. I was like, yeah, I love that she's into puzzles. And he's like, she's also a really good knitter. And I was like, that does not
got
surprise
the
me.
glitter on her face. She's got the heart-shaped sunglasses.
She's rad.
She's rad. Fourth place, she said at the finish line that she was basically in no woman's land the whole race. Beth, Caitlin, Ruth sort of out front. And then the pack that was chasing her from behind, Ruth was sort of on her own on an island.
Yeah.
And I don't think she had a perfect day. She said she's only been running 50, 60 miles a week.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
brought
it's
home a
cold
solid
and
fourth.
snowy at home. She's been doing some Nordic skiing and yoga, but yeah, it's really hard. She's been bumping down to like Reno and bumping down to Auburn to get on trails. But yeah, training in Truckee, California for a February summer race is no easy feat. So kudos. The ticket is down to Helen. She has 2 weeks to decide. She's going on a surf trip for a week. She really wanted that physical golden ticket, and she's going to figure out how to get that jumbo boy home. But I think, we were speculating it's maybe 50-50, maybe 60-40 that Helen takes the ticket. If Helen does not take the ticket in the next 2 weeks, it will roll to fifth place Nancy Zhang, who has gotten a golden ticket before, had a hard day at Western States, and really is hungry for redemption. And so I think that ticket rolling to Nancy, someone who's super hungry for it, would be a great addition to the Western States field.
Yep. Awesome. Well said. So fifth place, Nancy Zhang ran another fantastic race, 9 hours, 10 minutes.
But can we talk about the 9 hour, 10-minute cluster of women?
Yeah. Why don't you walk us through it here? Because they were, basically together. All of them.
I called it a bunch sprint in the HOKA women's group text, where I was like, great bunch sprint, Lottie Brinks. So essentially, Nancy, the women's like final battle over like the last 10K or so got really, really interesting, in which Nancy had kind of been in that spot all day. Kat Drew had fallen off and ended up dropping out at 75K in. And then Juliet Soli moved up, with Lottie Brinks kind of having to fight back a little bit. And what ended up happening is that we had 3 women finish within 30 seconds of one another. Nancy came falling across the finish line, and all of like 25 seconds behind her, you had Julia and Lottie sprinting basically neck and neck. I think it was like 6 to 8 seconds at the finish line at the end of the day. And Lottie was like, I tried everything I could to reel them in the last 2 miles, and nothing I did worked. So they went again 9:10:13, 9:10:40, 9:10:48 for Nancy Zhang, Juliet Soli, Lottie Brinks, your 5th, 6th, and 7th place women. They also, again, starting with Beth McKenzie, we had 12th overall, 13th overall, 14th overall, 15th overall, 16th overall. So they were all in this hotly contested women's kind of top 5 podium battle. And it was cool to see. I was so into that fight. Lottie Brinks brought up a really interesting point in her post-race Instagram post, where she said, I was right on my splits. I ran the exact time I thought I was going to run on the course. 4 minutes under the old course record. Turns out 6 women ran faster than me today. And I was like, it's so hard to be disappointed with that. That was indicative of Abby Hall.
Yep.
Last week at Black Canyon, where, ran under 9 hours. 6 women ran faster than her.
Yep.
And you're just like, come on.
Right.
I ran so well. I should be so happy. And yet I didn't quite stick the landing in a way. But I will say that Lottie, I was like, oh, how are you feeling? Are you going to run canyons? What do you want to do?
Come to canyons.
And she was like, because we talked to her pre-race.
Yeah.
And CCC is really the big goal for her this year. She finished 9th last year. She can definitely, I think, she feels like she can do much better on that course. Yeah. And so in my mind, for her, getting a golden ticket and getting into Western States would have been fun. Yeah. And she would take the ticket. But it wasn't necessarily the plan for this year. Yeah. So her quote unquote, the current race plan being laid out for her, she's really excited about, and it didn't necessarily have to have Western States to bump it up to the next level.
Yeah. So
super stoked for all those women. They put on an insane show. It was so cool being in the finishing chute while all that was happening.
Yeah, so cool. Shout out to Nancy, Juliet, and Lottie Brinks. In 8th place for the women was Holly Ranson from Australia, 9 hours, 33 minutes. 9th place, Anna McKenna, still falling a little bit short of that golden ticket she's been chasing forever. She finished in 9 hours, 40 minutes, also an Aussie. 10th place, Julia Chamberlain, a Kiwi, 9 hours, 43 minutes. That's your women's top 10 in the 102K yesterday. Were there any drops, notable drops?
I think
because Anna Loudon was 11th. Lucy Bartholomew was 12th.
I think Kat Drew was the one big notable drop on the women's side. And it was actually someone that we missed in the preview that I didn't even know it was here.
Right.
But this is a 100K course that would suit her really well. And she was in that kind of like Nancy Lottie group for most of the day, but ended up having GI issues and some dehydration and pulled the plug around the 75-kilometer mark.
Okay. Well, shout out to Kat Drew. Sorry that didn't work out, but
our Canadian neighbor.
Yeah, overall, wasn't a ton of attrition in the field yesterday. Probably testament to the fact that it was actually really pleasant racing conditions, maybe a little on the warm side, especially for the Northern Hemisphere dwellers, but a beautiful, beautiful day. Touching on fantasy quickly, I finished 131st out of 669. The community picks, which is the hive mind of everybody who played fantasy, finished 109th. Which I think is unusual. I didn't ask Travis, but it's like, okay.
The hive mind
Yeah,
sucked.
the hive mind was dumb. Hive mind was dumb. Right. What were you, 31st or something?
33.
33.
Is that a PR?
No, I've gotten I think 7th or 5th or something.
Okay.
No big deal.
No big deal. I didn't vote.
Anyway, didn't vote. Oh, Corinne.
Didn't submit them in time.
Oh, Travis is going to be pissed. Shout out to Tom Poland, who won Freetrail Fantasy for Tarawera 102K. We'll be in touch about getting you some swag from HOKA and Freetrail. Congrats, Tom. All right, let's just touch on the 50K quickly before we wrap up and get ready for our champions interviews here. Start with the men like we did the 100K. There was a battle for that podium. Hayden Hawks, dude.
He had words about Robbie Simpson at the finish line.
All right, so first through third, Hayden Hawks, 3 hours, 18 minutes, 46 seconds. Robbie Simpson, only a minute and 15 seconds back, 3:20:01. And then Michael Voss, local Kiwi boy, 3:23:13, all well under previous course record and all very close to one another. Talk about the Hayden-Robbie battle, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I think they both go. I mean, Hayden, when we had him in studio, was like, and then Robbie got added to the field, and I was like, come on, like, he is a 50K guy, and I'm more of a 100K, 100-mile guy. Doesn't matter. Hayden told me that he had words for Robbie after the race, in which he meant that, like, oh my God, those guys went out so fast. Like, I was just like, what am I going to do? And then I told Robbie that, and Robbie was like, whatever. Hayden just kind of sat back there and let us work, and then he just, like, blew by all of us. So it was, like, just very funny kind of hearing from both sides of that, where it's like they had a good battle. It was really tight. They both worked really hard for those respective first and second spots. I think it was a very respectable battle, and they ran really, really fast.
For our audience, at about halfway, there's a short out and back section where I got to see those lead men together. And
yeah, we like
smokes.
lollipop.
Yeah, there's a lollipop with a short little out and back. And at that point, we'll get to Hayden and I's head-to-head duel a little bit later. But they were like 25 minutes ahead of me, like 16 miles.
Yeah, Bianca was like several miles
Dude,
ahead of me.
they were sprinting. It's just incredible to see the level there, like up close and personal like that. And what Hayden said at the finish line is he didn't pass Robbie till 5K to go, where it's just like pretty dead flat on that crushed gravel path, basically all the way to the finish line.
And that to me speaks to endurance, right? It's one of those things where it's like, I kind of even thought about that for my own race, which was nothing glamorous, where I was like, okay, like these women are really strong, but like while I don't feel prepared for this, I do have really good endurance. And I think when we get to 5K to go, I can like kind of try to turn it back on to the best of my ability. And Hayden's got that 100K in him, you know? And so I think it's like with 5K to go, his ability to like continue to push at 3 hours into the race might be a little bit different than Robbie, who's more of that marathon to 50K guy. Like it's hanging on at the end of it, maybe in a little, like this is me. That's me with my armchair quarterback hat on. But I do think there's something to be said for like these endurance guys dropping down. We see it on the track too, right? When someone drops down in distance, who are like, they're the 5K guy going down to the 3K, like it generally works out pretty well.
Robbie's kind of like Caitlin to me, where it's like, man, I would love to see you kind of just focus on 100K to 100 mile for a little bit.
He's dabbled in the 80K.
Yeah.
And so I do think Robbie is,
because like he could run Western States crazy fast.
Oh, I have been trying for years.
All right, Robbie, peer pressure is coming. But
I do think at some point in time we can convince him to do it, but I do think him doing a little bit more, some more 80K stuff, some more 100K stuff in the years to come will be good. He's run Comrades. You know, I think he's an exceptionally good 80K runner. like a Lake Sonoma, like I think suits him really well. So it's like, I would love to see him at Black Canyon, 100K. But he is one of those UK boys, and I do think the heat is generally not Robbie's best friend.
Yeah, okay.
I think the heat scares him a
We
little
did
bit.
see Tom Evans win Western States, but anyway, Robbie, peer pressure is coming. We got to keep it moving so that we can get this done before the champions interviews. But final word, Hayden Hawks, dude, 3:18. What a stud. Running that time blows my mind. And what he said after the race, he's on the start list of the Canyon's 50K. It sounds like he's instead going to do Desert Rats 50K, a little closer to home.
And
he's only
spaces it out.
he's only doing 50Ks before Western States. Interesting strategy.
I think
Shout
it's
out
smart.
to Hayden. Again, you're coming off the best season of his career, second in Trail Runner of the Year, first in Ultra Runner of the Year, starting off with another big victory. Women's podium
Bianca taking the win.
Tarboten, South African.
Yeah.
Still, we barely got to meet her last night. She's going to be coming in for a champions interview here in a little bit, but 3:45:55,
So
stupid fast.
And like I told you before the race, she's a gal that's done more in that 30K to marathon distance. And so hasn't done quite as many 50Ks, but I think that she is mega talented, and I want to see her rip OCC so badly.
Yeah, so great. So we'll get to know her a little bit better here in the post-race champions interview. Second place, Madison Reynolds. So let me tell you a fun little story about Madison Reynolds. She caught me with about 5K to go in that flat sulfuric, hot springs area that we're running through on our way to the finish line here, and was flying. And I was like, oh my God, you're amazing. As she passed me, like, go, go, go. And she's like, oh, come with me. I'm like trying to keep up.
She's like, oh, you're the podcast guy.
Yeah, I was like, hey, what's your name? She's like, oh, it's Maddie. And she's like, are you Dylan? Are you the podcast guy? I was like, oh,
yes,
like
I am.
simultaneously proud, but also like so embarrassed that I'm like, oh, you're the podcast guy.
I got a couple Go Freetrails out there, so I feel it.
But it was so fun because she's like, come on, come with me. So I'm like, suffering at the end as I was expecting. And like, it felt like VO2 max sprinting to try and hang on to her wheel at the finish line. And then we had a fun little exchange at the finish line. The MCs there asked me if I would like to do the post-race interview. And of course I said I would be absolutely honored. So shout out to Madison Reynolds. Fun fact, she said that a year ago she was working at an investment bank, quit her job, now moved to Chamonix because she really wants to take her running seriously. I think she's probably in her early 20s.
That's the vibe I get.
And anyway, probably big ceiling ahead. So a name that we want to keep our eyes on.
Yeah. Super excited to see her rip it up this year, hopefully at OCC, maybe in some of the Golden Trail series stuff, but clearly very, very talented, young gun out of Australia.
Yeah. And I was in the middle of the sandwich between the second and third place women. So just behind Madison Reynolds was Julia Grant, a Kiwi who finished in 4:13:24, less than 2 minutes behind Madison.
Yeah, again, in that 40 to 44 age group, just absolutely crushing it. I mean, I think there were something like 20 women under 5 hours.
Yep.
In the race. this is a fast course for sure, but people were moving out there. Bianca was in a league of her own in a lot of ways. We're talking like 20 plus minutes clear of everyone else, but
26 minutes.
But everyone else was like, it was really cool. Like people were firing on all cylinders out there. And Esther and I were talking about the race afterwards, and I was like, man, it'd be nice to have fitness for this race because I think it'd be really fun.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to like trying to not like pass out, which would have been great.
Yeah. Okay, so shout out to the men's and women's podiums in the 50K. We're not going to go any deeper than that here. Final word on the 50K. I just want to give a shout out to Tobias Urban, who guessed 53 minutes and 39 seconds as the delta between me and Hayden Hawks.
That's really close.
Officially, it was 52 minutes, 58 seconds, which I'm terribly embarrassed about. I was hoping it would be under 45 minutes. It was 52, 58, but Tobias Urban guessed within 41 seconds. So Tobias, you are the winner, bro. Make sure you drop me a DM or drop Freetrail a DM, better yet, on Instagram, and we'll make sure to send you some gear for winning the prediction contest of how bad Hayden whooped my ass yesterday. I know you wanted to give a couple 100-mile shout outs before we sign
I
off.
think in part just because the men and women's win there, I think was incredibly impressive. I was talking to Ironman Ruth before we went live here, and we were talking about what a good run Kamino Miyazaki in the women's race had. She came in 17:40. I don't know that a woman's gone sub 18 hours here. Maybe I'll come back and run the miler instead, really get my money's worth, but really impressive. She was in the mix all day. She's having an epic battle with Naomi Brand, who ultimately ended up walking it in for fourth, but just wanted to give Kamino Miyazaki a big shout out. Other people getting those entries to UTMB, which is really important. Emma Timmis finished second in 18:50, and then Sarah Parkins finished third in 19:11. Switching over to the men's side, the favorite coming in was the favorite going out, Sam Harvey, who I think won that by UTMB race in Australia in the fall in like late 2024. Had a really, really solid run, 15:16:54, which I think is faster than what Adrian McDonald has run on this course. And if that is accurate, that's fast. So super, super solid. The video of him with his pacers at the finish line is really cute because they all three of them are coming down the finishing chute together, and then like they kind of part behind the two like pillars to like let him be center and to get out of the way of the photographers. And then it's like then they're doing the HOKA form at the finish line, so they're like hiding behind the pillars, and then they're kind of peeking out, and then they like go to high five one another. So it's just like the team camaraderie of getting those guys and gals to the finish line was really cool. But it was actually quite a tight battle on the men's side. Simon Cochran, another Kiwi, finished in 15:33:45 for second, and then a guy out of Great Britain, Ryan Whelan, finished in 15:56:11. So all three men under 16 hours, getting those spots to go to UTMB in 2026.
Shredzilla. Congrats to everybody in the Mila. As they call it. The Mila. Awesome. All right, well, we can wrap there. Maybe spare the audience our own personal race reports. Bottom line was we had a blast. Corinne and I had a blast out there. Challenged us deeply. I think we both feel proud to have gotten through our first races of the season. I know I have a lot of work to do. So
yeah, we ripped
Coach
the Band-Aids
Hannah,
off.
Come on, we got to get this old body going again. But
yeah, we ripped the Band-Aids off out there. It was not easy, nor was it pain-free, but we made it from point A to point B and got to experience what this race is really about. I think that's what you and I are taking home more than anything, is that we are so impressed with Tarawera as an event, as a race weekend, as a culture.
We're coming back.
We're coming back. Ryan's like, no.
If Ryan doesn't want to leave, he's staying for a week, and he's.
I don't need to come back because I'm not leaving.
All right. Well, yeah, as Corinne and Ryan have both said here, yeah, what a great weekend. We're so grateful for the hospitality of the Kiwi trail running community, of Ironman and UTMB, of HOKA, everybody who supported our coverage here this weekend. One final special shout out I wanted to give is Carl Sabe. I mentioned him in the pre-race show. He is going to be finishing the Tarawera Trail today, 3,000 kilometer traverse from the tip of the north tip of the North Island to the south tip of the South Island of New Zealand. He's going to finish in under 32 days. It looks like roughly 100K a day for 30 plus days. Unfreaking believable.
Wow.
So what, and kind of ironic that he's finishing during Tarawera weekend. So what a great week. What a great weekend in New Zealand trail running. Shout out to Carl Sabe for shattering another long trail course record.
So cool.
Closing comments from you, Corinne?
We did it. We came, we saw, we did not conquer, I would say, but we watched other people conquer, and that's what's really important. And I can't wait to come back. It's been a real treat, and I wish we were staying longer. So fun. Okay, final thank yous, of course, to our man behind the scenes, Mr. Ryan Thrower, who worked harder than anybody this week and produced banger after banger, as he does. Thank you, Ryan. You are the best. Thank you, Ruth and Devin from Ironman. Thank you, HOKA, for always supporting our golden ticket coverage. The next time we're doing this, I guess, is at Canyons. Yeah, I think that's our next official stop on the circuit.
At least on the golden ticket circuit. We'll obviously be trailgating for maybe Chuckanut. Should we trailgate for Chuckanut? Okay, like Ryan's saying no. We'll trailgate for the Big Alta for sure, and for Gorge Waterfalls. And then we'll, of course, be at Canyons later in the spring.
You guys are digging our news shows, too. So
Newsy
I think
shows.
you can expect a few more of those coming down.
Yeah, we got a lot to
pipeline.
talk about on that front, too, which maybe we'll do in the next couple of days.
Ryan's like, no more podcasts. And
Yeah.
we're like, more podcasts.
Anyway, that does it for us here in New Zealand. What a fantastic weekend. We really hope you appreciated it and enjoyed our coverage. Make sure you watch all the interviews that we're going to be doing with the champions here starting in just a few minutes. And as always, we appreciate you for tuning in to Freetrail. On behalf of our boy Ryan Thrower, Corinne Malcolm, I'm Debo. Beach Stars, mate.